Welcome to the Momentum Lifestyle Podcast, where we interview an inspiring, educational, and entertaining guest to help you build confidence, find balance, and live a life of impact. We'd like to thank our sponsor today, Be Spunky. Now, Blake, Janelle, and myself have been using their Reboot product for well over 6 months now, and it has been life-changing. I found myself recovering faster, having way more energy throughout the day, and honestly feeling just more jacked up as a man. And this is because Reboot is clinically formulated to support healthy male hormone levels, providing stress relief, improved strength and stamina, enhanced drive, and overall well-being. Be Spunky Reboot contains a proprietary blend of 10 natural and organic herbs and active ingredients that are renowned for helping men to enhance physical and cognitive performance, improve stamina, energy, and endurance, optimize testosterone levels, support healthy reproductive function, support cardiovascular function, relieve stress, mild anxiety, irritability, relieve tiredness, fatigue, support healthy sleep patterns, and support healthy body weight. So as you can see, it is a must-have product for all men. So head to their website, bespunky.com.au. That's bespunki.com.au, and use the code MOMENTUM to receive 10% off all Be Spunky products.
Michelle Panning, welcome to the podcast.
Hello. Thank you for having me here.
It's good to have you here. Looking forward to talking all things relationships, intimacy, triggers, wounds, etc.
Yeah.
But before we get started, can you give a 90-second life update on your past and what's got you to where you are now?
The pressure. Okay. So essentially, I just had a history of like really bad relationships. I felt like I had no control over my emotions. And I would either just like completely shut down and be really passive aggressive, or I would explode and scream at my partner, or just say something that I knew would hurt them. And couple that with constantly seeking external validation. Like it was never enough. And I also worked in the sex industry for over a decade as a stripper. So you can imagine that was like a fucking feeding frenzy for me of just more, and unable to handle rejection, and had huge abandonment wounds. So I really like set off on my own journey to heal that, because I kind of had like a little come to Jesus moment of like, maybe I'm the problem. Maybe I'm contributing to this. And yeah, it was like I finally took responsibility for my part that I was playing. And yeah, and then I found coaching and wanted to share this with people. And yeah, now that's my life's work, like helping women specifically heal their, stuff around relationships and experience real intimacy with men. And that's done through fully connecting with themselves. So that has been my journey, to kind of sum it up really quickly.
That was a quick summary. What does it look like? It's obviously a really interesting backstory that you've got. How did you see connection to self when you were a stripper, as opposed to how you might see connection to self now? Like, what was your interpretation potentially of it there, and how do you see it differently now?
I could have told you that at the time, I would have told you that I was so confident and really connected to myself, but I had no concept of what that meant. It was a facade. It was, I know what you will be attracted to, and I will be that. Yeah. So like, actually there was no connection to myself. I could fake it, right? So I could do the moves, quote unquote, if you will, to seem like I was connected and I was in my body. But actually, when I started doing embodiment work, I thought, I didn't even know this was a thing that you were supposed to do to connect to yourself. I thought being connected to yourself was journaling, doing face masks, going for a walk, drinking water. I was like, great, tick, done. And now it's like, oh, for me, connection to myself is listening to myself, slowing down, actually making time and space to be in my body. And that kind of was the evolution the final couple of years working in the sex industry where I was starting to connect with myself. And I was doing privates in those last couple of years. So working like bucks parties, going to people's houses, campsites, all of that. So I wasn't working in the strip club anymore. And so when I would give people lap dances, I would play my own music and I would just take my time and like slow down and close my eyes and really, have it be an experience for me. I remember a guy said like, "Oh, I really don't like this music." And I was like, "Well, it's not for you. It's for me." And really allowing myself to drop in and feel, because I had shut my turn on down for a really long time. And I was like, well, I'm just going to allow this. And honestly, I connected so much deeper with men from that space because I was present. I wasn't often like, "Oh, let me show you my ass and twerk for you, and you're going to love that." It was like, I'm actually just going to be, and I'm going to feel, and I'm going to experience. And men would be blown away because they were like, "What the fuck? I've never seen this before." And I wasn't doing anything. I was actually probably doing a lot less than I was before. But that was actually quite healing for me.
What does it look like to connect to your body? Because people's interpretation of connecting to their body, and then when they actually do the deep work, there's often a big gap in terms of their understanding. And in hindsight, when you reflect on your past, what do you think stopped you from really deeply connecting to your body earlier, potentially?
I did not want to know what the fuck was lurking there because it's, trauma and these emotions get stored in the body, which now I know. At the time I didn't. One, I just didn't see the importance of it. I didn't see the value of it. Like, oh, connect to your body. Cool. Why? Life's just fine. Thank you. And then when I started to dive into that, I was just met with so much resistance from myself of like, I knew that I was opening Pandora's box and there was a lot of rage and a lot of grief and a lot of shame and a lot of disgust that was lurking there. And naturally, I was like, I don't want to fucking feel that. No, I want to feel the pleasure. I want to feel the joy. I want to feel the love. I want to feel that. But there's one dial on emotions. And so if you turn down the dial on the quote unquote good emotions, you're also turning down if you turn down the dial on bad emotions, you're turning down the dial on everything. And so there was just a lot of fear around like, no, I don't want to go there. And so I understand that when people want to start doing embodiment work, it sounds really sexy, right? Ooh, yeah, we're going to like use breath and movement and touch and sound to get into our bodies. And we're going to be these feminine people or whatever, or men, women, whoever. But it can be quite overwhelming at times because the process of getting into your body is the ability to just fucking sit with whatever is coming up for you. And that is not often fun. And this actually dropped in for me recently around, I've gotten really good at allowing, anger, rage, grief, shame, disgust, all of those things that I mentioned before. What's really challenging for me to sit with is boredom. Like, I don't want to sit with that. And so that's when I notice I will pull myself out of my body. Like, oh, let me pick up my phone. Let me see what Instagram's doing. Let me talk to other people. And so that getting into your body, and I can talk about how we do that, but it's really that ability to just fucking be present with whatever is coming up. And to get into your body, I've noticed this in myself, and I think this is quite common for people of wanting this almost like really complicated process of like, tell me the steps. And there's got to be, surely I've got to do like a, 6-month course on how to do this. It's breath, touch, movement, and sound. That's it. Do that over and over and over. And I think people want a quick fix, and it's not a quick fix. It takes quite a while to fully be in your body. I've still got a ways to go, you know.
What does it look like? You talk about breath, sound, movement. Did I forget one?
And touch.
Touch. That's right. What does that look like for you if you explore each of those individually, say, 10 years ago to 5 years ago to now? What's the journey look like across those kind of 4 avenues, I guess? And when you break it down, what do you think is the biggest barrier when it comes to sex and intimacy, whether it be sound, which I know for a lot of people, there's like a lot of resistance around that. But having worked with a lot of women, what do you see as the biggest barrier out of those 4 as well?
So the difference between like 10 years ago, I didn't even know that these tools existed. Like I was like, I don't know, get in your body, why? And then 5 years ago, I started to learn these things. And I can say with absolute confidence, it was very performative on my end. Let me make the sounds that everyone else is making because that's what I've heard is supposed to happen. So I was, sexually, we'll just get into it. I was always a very loud person, but it was from what I had been imprinted from porn, right? So like the higher pitched moaning and like, it was really, here, let me validate you to show you that you're doing a good job. It was not an expression of my pleasure at all. And I think now the sounds that come out of me, I don't even fucking know. I do not know. Like sometimes I look back and I go, what the fuck was that? Like growling or crying or whatever, just fully allowing whatever's there for me to just be there without the judgment around how that looks. And so the biggest barrier that I've seen, and it's going to be different for everyone, right? Some people are really going to struggle with moving their body. Some people are really going to struggle with the breath. Most women that I have seen, and I'd be curious to hear like, how this goes with men as well. Sound, as you said, is the biggest barrier. There's such a fear around the voice, around activating the voice. And also the breath as well, because we live in a very like, it's very, sex and intimacy can be very tension based. Right. And so it's like we hold our breaths and we don't make sound and we're just like get to the thing. And so it's really unlearning all of those patterns in the body. And just a point on that is that boredom will 100% come up for sure, because your neural pathway of doing something one way is super strong. It's like a super highway. And now it's like, oh, breathe really deeply and full and make sound and move your body. And so that neural pathway is like a dirt road that you've never taken before, And so you're going to be like, this isn't pleasurable. I don't like this. And that's okay. Just stay with it and it will shift over time. But yeah, the sound, like when I work with clients, I'm like, okay, let's make a sound. If they make a sound, it's like, like, okay, great starting point. And, something that's really important for me with the people that I work with is I work with a lot of people pleasers. So activating their rage and their like primal wild nature, because that's part of the feminine as well.
I want to get to that as well. But before I do, one of the things that you mentioned on your timeline is the difference between performance and embodiment, which I kind of wanted to touch on a little bit more. You kind of mentioned when it came to sound in particular, that your previous forms of sound were more performance-based and now it's more embodied. What does that look like for someone who might be new to these concepts? So not necessarily the sound, but the difference between like performance-based and more like embodied and what's actually kind of coming through you?
I think this is why, having like a self-pleasure practice or a self-embodiment practice or whatever you have is really important, so that you're figuring these things out on your own, so that you don't have the added pressure of a partner, even if there's no pressure on their end. It's like this internal pressure of, ugh, if you're trying to get out of performance-based sex or performance-based whatever. And it really is, for me anyways, it was a case of just figuring it out over time, of doing something, then being like, oh, actually I can see that was like, I was pushing myself a little bit. Okay, how did that feel in my body? And having a safe space for yourself to express these pieces, so that you can just feel free, right? So that you can and move your body and shake and growl if you need to, or scream into a pillow during your self-pleasure practice if that's what's coming up, and having that be okay without the judgment. And this is also really nuanced, because there's a part of me that is a massive exhibitionist. And I fucking love just being like, ha, 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 yes. And I do love performing. And let me know if this makes sense, but there's a difference between performing for you and performing for me, like for my pleasure.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, I'm going to do these things that look performative. I might look like a porn star, for instance, or a stripper, but I'm receiving pleasure from this versus I am giving to you. And it is a gift, but it's not from a place of like, oh my God, I hope you like me if I do this. Does that make sense?
Yeah. It's almost like it becomes a intrinsic driver and expression for self, which is always going to come from a better place than an extrinsic, where it's like purely, it's like the embodiment versus the head part of like, what will they think of this, or you're performing for someone else. So it's a fuller, more embodied expression of an intrinsic feeling, essentially.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like the head will come in, right, and go, okay, I think I should go down on him, because that's what happens next. He's gone down on me. I need to go down on him. This is how things work. Versus, you know what I would fucking love right now? I feel like I'm gonna get really dirty, but like, I would love to go down on you. Yeah. I'm like, I would fucking love to suck your cock right now. Right. Versus I have to, it's like, ooh, I want to. And that's it's the same exact act, but with a completely different energy behind it, So yeah, because I really struggled with that when I started doing embodiment work, and it was like, I would journey the archetype of the slut, and it was like, this is all for you. It's not performative. And I was like, okay, so don't do anything that is performative. And I struggled with that, because I was like, am I performing? Am I being myself? I don't know right now, because it was very enmeshed. And then after a while, it was like, I actually fucking love this. It's actually really fun for me to do this. I'm not trying to win anyone over. This is just me being in my fullest expression. And so I think it's just you going along your own journey and finding your edge of what feels good, what felt like a contraction in your body of like, upon reflection, that actually really didn't feel that good. And what was like, fuck yeah, that was like pretty hot.
On that, and it's such a good point, it's like, to get out of your head and into your body, we can kind of play with, oh, I should do that or I shouldn't do that, and really create quite a restrictive environment for ourselves sexually. But one of the things, I'm sure you spoke about this with the tribe group, I've definitely spoken as well, it's like using your body as a compass instead of your head. So what feels good to you from a like embodied feeling point of view, as opposed to getting in your head of like, I should like that, I shouldn't like that, and shame and all the stories that come into play. Can you speak to that a bit as to what that might look like in the bedroom?
I think there needs to be, we all have sexual imprinting.
Mm.
We all do. And, you know, if you're listening, you might like think about what your parents told you about sex, and you might go, oh, they didn't tell me anything. That is a message. We don't talk about this. That is something for you, and we will never discuss this. That is bad. And so really looking at your blueprint around what you should and shouldn't do. And I feel like I have yet to meet someone who hasn't had any sort of sexual shame. You know what I mean? Like even for me, I was like, I'm totally fine with, you know, like the word slut, and I've reclaimed it. And then someone called me a slut, and I was like, what the fuck? Like triggered, right? And all these things of like, I would hold back in this way because that's not what, you know, good girls do, or I shouldn't sound this way, or I shouldn't do this thing, or I should do this thing that I really don't like, but I'm going to do it anyways. And so this is why, you know, outside of sexuality, but having a practice where you connect with your body. And I do that through like just sensual movement of just connecting, right? And asking myself the question, what am I feeling right now? And go beyond the emotions, like start checking in, what sensations am I actually feeling in my body? Because that's how you start to connect. You build that mind-body connection. And so having that in the bedroom, you need to have that connection, because then you feel the part of you that like goes winces when something happens that you don't like, versus in your head going, I should like this, or even I liked this a week ago. Right? We're always changing, we're always evolving. So maybe what worked for you last week might not work for you today, or your partner, you know, wants to have sex and you're not into it, rather than going, well, I should, because we only had sex once this week. So, you know, better do it again. It's like, actually, the truth of it is like, my body feels pretty contracted around that right now. And then you can investigate even further of like, is there something that's not being expressed right now? Or is there something that I need from my partner or whatever? And so having that connection, and just throw the fucking shoulds and the shouldn'ts out the window, not even just for sexuality, like your whole life, just get rid of it, put it in the bin. It's not helpful.
Yeah. One of the things that you spoke of briefly there, which would be super valuable for blokes, being that we kind of speak to blokes more so, is essentially like conscious sexuality, of really getting out of your head and just being super attuned and super aware to the feminine and what feels good and what doesn't. What does that look like? And potentially even maybe in your own experience, the difference between, you know, like a conscious lover who's really present with what you're enjoying and what's happening in that moment, and potentially more a headstrong mechanical lover who's like, oh, this worked before, so it's going to work this time. What's that been like for you in terms of receiving the difference between those two?
I have a huge smile on my face because I cannot even tell you how incredible it feels to be with a man who is fucking attuned to you. And I want to say too, like, men, this is not your responsibility to like read her every move and she should never have to say anything. Like, there is a level of self-responsibility that if something's really not working for me, like I can speak up and say like, hey, I'd love this or whatever. But, you know, in the past, I've been with men it was very like, and I was in this mindset too, but very, very orgasm focused. Of like, this is what we do. We kiss, we touch, we do oral, we have penetrative sex. I come, if you come, great. You probably won't. So saws, best of luck next time. And I was like, okay, well, that's what my life is destined to be. And then going on my own work and kind of like reclaiming my pleasure. But now, like my partner now, oh my God. Like, I'm going to have to send him this podcast. I'll be like, babe, I'm your biggest fucking hype girl. But he's so deeply attuned to my body and like not just attuned, but when I'm starting to like get really activated in my pleasure, like he starts getting really activated, and you can see in his eyes like the like, oh yes, more, bring it, more, which is really beautiful. And I mean, so I posted this on my social media. I mean, you commented on it, but like I literally just came from oral for the first time ever, like a week ago or something. Like that's pretty fucking massive. And it's because I feel so safe. I feel zero pressure at all. I do not have to have an orgasm. I do not have to perform. I do not have to do anything that I don't want to do. If I'm like, I'm over it, or I'm a bit sore or whatever, cool, no problem. That's fine. There's no, because then I don't want to speak up. So in this relationship, like I can just fully speak what's there for me, and to be able to receive from someone who's so attuned to my body, because he's so connected to his body as well. He's so connected to himself, therefore can pick up on my changes in breathing, or my different sounds, or even just how wet I'm becoming, or whatever. And to be with someone like that, like I feel like I can fully let go and surrender, which I haven't really had before. So it's pretty life-changing.
Massively life-changing, no doubt.
Yeah.
So what does that look like for a guy if he's thinking about really creating a safe container where both himself and his partner individually and collectively can push the edges while being obviously a really safe container? But what are the potential traits that a guy would want to embody in order to create safety within the bedroom, do you think?
Mm-hmm. Well, to create safety in the bedroom, you have to create safety out of the bedroom first and foremost. And so if you guys are not communicating, if you are not being honest, if you're not holding space, if you're judging her, or shaming her in any sort of way, she's not going to feel safe in the bedroom. Like she's just not. So the qualities for me that I love, number one, presence. And women are very attuned to your subtle drop off in presence, right? We can notice that change in breathing. We can notice if your eyes are kind of darting around the room, and then it's like, oh no, I'm closing, So the first thing is like presence. I want to feel that you are here with me, that the room is kind of dissolving around us, and it's just you and me, and you've got me. Yeah, you've got me. The other quality, and I don't know how to kind of put this, but I guess a space of non-judgment and a space of everything is welcome. Because I hear from women all the time, like, I cried after sex. How embarrassing is that? I'm like, babe, that's fucking beautiful. That's beautiful. That's nothing to be ashamed of. And I know, like, I've cried during sex multiple times. And I remember my exes would be like, oh my God, what happened? What's wrong? What did I do? And I'm like, I'm feeling a lot of love. I'm just feeling things. I don't know. There's no story attached to it. And so having a space where she can just be everything. Sometimes rage might come up. Shame might come up. Grief might come up. An outpouring of love might be there. And having that ability to just be like, great, bring it all. I'm here, and I'm unmoved by that. So that like grounded kind of quality. Yeah, I think those would be like the two biggest things that I feel of, like, all of you is welcome and I'm here. Like, we don't want to make it too complicated.
Nah, it's good. It's really good. And I think kind of speaks potentially quite obvious to the feminine and potentially not so obvious to the masculine, is that full presence and performance are opposite ends of the scale. Like if you're performing or trying to perform with an end goal or an outcome, then that's going to put you in your head, which takes you out of being fully present. But I assume, exactly as you said, the majority of the feminine, consciously or unconsciously, are pretty attuned to the difference between those two kind of energies, I assume.
Mm-hmm. You think we can't feel it? We can feel it. We can feel it, you know? We
Awesome.
can feel even if you're in your head, like thinking about like, oh my God, like I'm not staying hard, or, you know, I need to come, or whatever. Like, honestly, I don't care about that. I don't care. I just want to feel you. I want to feel you there with me and not be attached to an outcome. Because when you're attached to an outcome, we feel like you're attached to my outcome. Please never say, are you going to come? Please don't say that. I was, now I'm not. Like, it's gone now.
That was close, and now I'm not.
Yeah.
But you used the word slut before very nicely, but also the triggers that it potentially brought for you. And no doubt when people hear that word, they'll have their own triggers. What's the value in triggers, and how do you consciously step into it and expand when the majority of people look away and are essentially triggered by it?
So easy to do. Yeah, I will not be doing that. Nope. I will drink, I will watch Netflix, I will, you know, pick up my phone, whatever it is, to avoid that feeling. But our triggers are the greatest gift that we have, because if you're starting on this healing journey and you're like, great, where do I start? Get triggered, start there. Your triggers are shining a light into the places within you that are calling for healing, right? And if you're getting triggered about every little thing, you got a lot of healing to do. Nothing wrong with that. I was in the same boat. So it's really giving you a roadmap to what is needing some love and compassion and support. And so the first way to deal with these triggers, it's very easy to judge the triggers, right? I fucking hate that I get angry. I hate that I'm so reactive. I hate that I'm a people pleaser. Okay, well, let me tell you, the way to ensure that your triggers stay put and active is to shame and judge them. So the first step in healing these triggers is to approach them. I heard this somewhere and I loved it. Approach them with friendliness, right? Compassion, kindness. Can you even just, you don't have to do anything with it, but can you even just accept that it's here? This is my reality right now. Cool. Great. Because oftentimes when we get in touch with these pieces and it's like asking what this part of you needs, it's most often love, safety, compassion, just to be seen, to be validated, right? And it's like these, for a lot of it, it's the inner child that is like incredibly wounded and calling for your love and attention, essentially.
Great answer. So how do you, we use the word conscious relationship, how do you see the difference between triggers in a conscious relationship and how people might perceive the value in them, as opposed to triggers in what might be a slightly less conscious relationship and how they see that in a negative way?
So I think there's also this narrative that like once you meet quote unquote the one, which does not exist, but once you meet the one, your triggers will disappear. You will never be triggered. Lies. That is a bullshit lie. Like, I'm triggered in this relationship, you know, I'm like, all of my abandonment stuff is coming up and like, I'm afraid and oh my God, what if I'm not good enough and all of the things. And so that stuff has come up for me before in past relationships. And then I've just listened to it. And so instead of, I would feel the, for instance, I would feel the abandonment wound, being afraid of being left. And so instead of leaning into it, I would project it out and cause a lot of drama and project all my insecurities onto them so that I would push them to leave. And they would. And I would go, see, I knew it. I always get left. Right. Whereas in this, it's like I'm leaning into it. I'm speaking it to him. I'm feeling a lot of fear that you're going to find out who I really am. And you're going to see that I'm not as amazing as you think I am. And then you're going to leave me, and just actually giving it a voice takes the charge away. Because he's like, yeah, thank you for sharing that. And I'm not going anywhere. I want all parts of you. It's like, oh, fuck, really? Okay. And so the triggers are not this big, scary thing that we need to turn away from. Our triggers are there for us to evolve and grow. They're such a gift for us because it's like, okay, I have a choice to run away from this. And the thing is, if you're in an unconscious relationship, I guess, what can happen is you start to think that, oh, this person, because all of my stuff's coming up, this person is not my person. And so therefore I'm going to leave. Right. And we can talk about like stages of relationship, right? The honeymoon stage where all you see is your similarities. And oh my God, they're so amazing. And then it goes into like the power struggle where all you see is your differences and all your shit's coming up. And so then in that place you go, they're probably not my person. So you know what? I'm going to leave to find someone who's a better fit. And then you do. And then you go, oh yeah, yay. Yes, it's so great. See, I knew it. This is a better fit. And then the power struggle comes again and all your shit comes up because you're not actually dealing with the thing. You're looking at the surface level, right? Rather than going deep and making it their problem. Oh, you are the one who's bringing this up. No, relationships are a container for healing and growth. Right. And I remember my therapist saying, because I said, well, I don't understand why this shit is still coming up for me because I've done so much healing work on my own. She was like, that's the problem. You've done so much healing work on your own, but these issues, these wounds were created in relationship. They need to be healed in relationship. And so I was like, oh, fuck. And so being in a conscious relationship where you need both people to be committed to that vision of growth, because you have really three parties in a relationship. You have your partner, and then you have the relationship as a separate entity. And so it's kind of asking like, what does the relationship need as well? And when both parties are willing to lean in to triggers and speak that and communicate in a safe, healthy way, magic can be created. Like I have never experienced anything like this. And I'm so excited to see where I go from here because I'm like, fuck, I've never had this level of support before and love and admiration and care and just all of the things. And it can really be a catalyst for huge amounts of growth if you're willing to lean into that.
Well answered. So long story short, in terms of the triggers is you either see them as an opportunity for growth and mirroring back really what is your stuff, or you see them as like their problem, they're the wrong person. And you just continue the vicious cycle of dating, the honeymoon period, and then moving through that into the power. It just perpetuates itself for decades.
Yes. And one thing I want to say too is, and I had to give myself this bit of a kick up the ass a little while ago. It's all well and good if you have self-awareness. Great. Good on you. I'm happy for you. If you do not take action on that and you don't do something different, nobody cares that you have self-awareness. That self-awareness does not fucking change anything. And I know that's a bit of like tough love, but I see it all the time in personal development. And I was doing it for years of being like, I'm so aware. And this is why I do this. And this pattern comes from this. And because my ex-boyfriend did that. And my dad did this. And that's why I am the way that I am. Great. Now what? And I was like, that wasn't part of the plan. I did not plan for that. I'm doing something different. And so now it's like, I meet myself in those moments where I'm triggered And I literally see a fork in the road, and this like voice comes in going, all right, put your money where your mouth is. You say you want something different, do it. And so the easy option for me is to shut down. And so the harder option is to go, I feel afraid right now because it's vulnerable. And I don't want to do that. Right. But you don't grow unless you take the steps to grow. And so get that awareness and then do the things that are necessary. And sometimes the thing that is necessary is getting support, is working with a coach, is working with a therapist, is doing whatever. Because I hear a lot of people are like, I listen to all the podcasts and it's like, it's still coming up for me. I'm like, because you're not implementing anything. So do the thing.
Spot on. Loving this chat. Final question for you. Based on all the women that you've worked with and your own experience, what would be 3 things that you think as a collective, and obviously everyone's got their own stuff, but as a collective that blokes could and should consider when it comes to creating a healthy, safe, intimate, and passionate relationship?
Okay. So 1, do your own work. Because you can only meet someone at the level that you've met yourself. And so it's all well and good to say, yes, I want to hold space for her emotions. Can you hold space for your emotions? Because if not, good luck. Truly, like best of luck with that. It's not going to happen. And so allowing yourself to meet your feminine, right? If you want to love the feminine, love your own feminine, right? Do your healing work around your mother, your exes, all the things, right? You know, like I say to women, you can't simultaneously hate men and want a relationship with one, right? And so do that work to heal that and get really good with your own, emotional, internal world, really. So that's actually like 2 things, because 1, get in touch with your own feminine, get good with that. 2, get in touch with your masculine, do your own work, be around other men who are immersed in this, do your, like, I don't know what you guys do, warrior training, or like whatever, go into the woods, chop shit, but get in touch with that and get in touch with your presence and your grounding and being able to really hold space for yourself and doing that. So that's like a kind of a 2-parter. And then in terms of like how you can show up for your woman, like ask her what she needs, ask her what she wants, do that, make an effort, right? Esther Perel, I love her. And she talks about like, we can become so obsessed with safety and familiarity and all of this. We also need novelty and excitement. And so it's very easy for both people to get very comfortable in relationships. And that feels really good to begin with. And then it becomes a bit boring. So what can you do to actually keep the spark alive and keep it moving and being really okay with experimenting and what feels good for us and being connected to your own body and following those impulses. And just really checking in with your woman of like, how can I serve you? You know, like hearing that question from a man, I'm like, well, let me tell you.
Brilliant. And if people want to find out more about you and the brilliant work that you do, where's the best spot for them to find you?
So the best spot is on Instagram. I'm always on Instagram. So at Michelle Panning, I'm sure you'll put it in the show notes. Like I've got a website as well, michellepanning.com. But I'm always on there. And I love to hear from men, even though I don't necessarily work with men at this point. I love hearing from men and how my work has like impacted you. So if this, chat has impacted you in some way, like please DM me on Instagram because I want to hear from you.
Awesome. Thanks again. That was brilliant.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in this week. As always, if you enjoyed listening, please leave a review, give us a shout out across socials, or share with a friend so that we can continue to share these incredible conversations with more and more people.